We're starting in just a second. Got a couple people on the live already. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Mavs Sports Take, the first few episodes. We are back here, Ryan Roberts and David Turner back to talk to you all about everything football, sports, life in general. Unmuzzled sports talk. If you missed last week's show, David and I had former NFL running back and Utah's standout running back, now coach at Weber State, Mr. Quinton Ganther, and a longtime ex-NFL scout and current director of player personnel at the University of Illinois, James Kirkland, on to discuss the state of football and the impact of the extra year of eligibility granted to college seniors with the changing landscape of recruiting in constant flux. A couple of really nice perspectives there. We had a bit of a roundtable discussion. It was a great time. Of course, like I said, Ryan Roberts here, Director of Scouting NFL Draft Bible. I have Mr. David Turner with me now. David, how are we doing tonight, my friend?
Doing great. Can't wait to get into this conversation with Ian Williams and, talk more NFL and college football and, whatever else comes up tonight. Anybody in the chat wants to talk about a certain thing, we are live. Feel free to throw questions and comments in there, and we can talk about whatever you like. We always like that fan interaction here at Mavs Sports Take.
Absolutely. So as David said, anybody that's watching live, you want to throw in a question at any time, we'll be taking live questions throughout the night. We want to thank you all for joining along with us, taking a listen to this week's Mavs Sports Take. It is episode 8, and we are just fired up here to talk football from this past weekend. We're going to talk about football, college, and NFL coming up this weekend as well. Really previewing some games. And of course, like David said, we're going to have a really special one for me. We got Mr. Ian Williams, former Notre Dame Fighting Irish defensive tackle, coming on with us. He was a really damn good player, during the latter stage of the Charlie Weiss years. Brian Kelly was his coach during his senior year. Now he is working in radio, doing some stuff out there in the Bay Area. So excited to have him out. But before we do, we want to do a quick recap of this past weekend's games. We're talking college football to start. If you listened to us last week, starting a little off course here, LSU and Mississippi State. I wanted to talk about this one first, David, because we both said there was going to be some offensive firepower from Mississippi State with Mike Leach in his first game, which there was. There was no absence of excitement in their 44-34 victory over LSU. I was very convinced, though, that in the end, LSU and those athletes were going to kind of, take it down the stretch and maybe win by like 10 points or so. That obviously did not happen. We saw Miles Brennan, the quarterback from LSU, struggle a little bit. It was his first career start. We're going to give him a little bit of slack on that one, right? He's the guy that's following Joe Burrow. If there is there's not much harder things to do in sports than follow a Heisman Trophy winner, first overall pick at the quarterback position. So very tough situation against Mike Leach, Mississippi State Bulldogs. And they were, obviously very buoyed by their transfer quarterback, KJ Costello from Stanford, who, was an accomplished quarterback at Stanford, dealt with some injuries in 2019 after a nice 2018 season, and then burst onto the scene this game, 620 yards or so, give or take a couple yards there, 4 or 5 touchdowns, was absolutely dynamic. David, this did not go quite the way that we predicted it. What were some general thoughts of the LSU Mississippi State 44-34 Mississippi State victory?
The thing I noticed, I think the most, was how LSU's offensive line gave up pressure, and their athletes didn't respond to giving up that pressure. It seemed like their backs and their line weren't in sync on how to pick things up and where to go with it. Also, the quarterback made a couple missed reads and some missed throws. Mississippi State's defense stood up, and they gave up 34 points, but at the end of the day, they got a couple turnovers. I know one of the corners got a pick and stuff. So this is a defense that made some plays when they needed to, help put their backup or their quarterback and their offensive position with some short fields to make some plays. And again, Mississippi State's new offense man, that was a heck of an outcome because, I mean, we were all talking about how with a shortened offseason, you got a new coach, a transfer quarterback, they might not be kicking or gelling right away. And all of a sudden, here they go. The air raid goes out and smacks the defending champions with 44 points. So, kudos to Mike Leach. Kudos to Costello, because I don't know if you saw the interview after the reporter was trying to interview him, and all his teammates were there saying that they loved the guy. He was such a great guy. It almost brought him to tears. It looked like, with their congratulations, and what this game meant to Costello was great. And I really think that Mississippi State made a huge statement. Obviously, they're knocking off the number one team in the land. I think Ed Orgeron and his crew need to, they need to get to work, like Ed said in his post game. Losing's on him, and he's got to figure it out. And they had guys opt out, then opt back in. Are we going to count on them? Not count on them? Some transfer kids. So they had a lot of moving parts going on through all this instability that we're seeing across the landscape. And it ultimately just affected them on the field. I mean, ultimately, I think, again, LSU will figure it out. They got all these athletes. They got great players. They got incredible NFL prospects there. So, they'll figure it out. They'll bond. They'll get together. Orgeron will get them all worked out over there.
So I have to ask David, because obviously, LSU, it was kind of the perfect storm for that upset. I feel like I should have had a little more foresight for that, right? They're replacing 20 of 22 starters. That is obviously a big thing to overcome, that much turnover in one offseason, right? Coming off of the national championship, they did not have a lot of guys coming back. You mentioned the guys that opting out. On top of Costello, that great storyline, right? The Mike Leach storyline. What is more true for you? Okay, I'm going to put an ultimatum up here. LSU is down, maybe go 6-6, or Mississippi State is a true player in the SEC. What do you think is more likely?
Ooh, I don't really like either of those.
You're selling both, Ed. You're selling both.
Yeah, no, I think if I had to choose between the two of them, Mississippi State's more of a player than we gave them credit to. And again, I don't think you could have seen the upset when you had a new coach, a new transfer quarterback, and those things. Like if they were going up against, even Florida or, somebody else that has a little bit of, they had returning starters and everything, you might have been like, hey, they're giving up 20 starters against this team. But here's a whole new coaching staff coming in into the SEC with a whole new style of offense, new defensive coordinator, everything. So it's hard to just go say, I should have seen this upset coming, because, man, I don't think anybody in America really saw Mississippi State not only hanging in this game, but winning outright, and especially winning by 10 points. I don't think any better in America would have put 10 points on, Mississippi State. Every book in America would have taken that one and said, okay, I'll bet you, because that's a lot of points to win by. It was a shocker game. This is why we play, and this is why we love college football, because the kids compete so hard, and the staffs get in their labs and they cook it up, and it's fun. So, it was a great game to watch. I watched it from beginning to end. I was super impressed with Costello. I was super impressed that the Mississippi State defense made plays and turned it up. I mean, they were really giving the LSU offensive line some havoc. The front seven was coming from different ways, and they got a long corner there at number one. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I think he's a junior or sophomore. Man, that kid's long, and he's like a 6-foot corner. It was kind of impressive to watch him do some things there.
Yeah, and I'll say, it was so impressive because I mean, I'll be completely transparent and completely honest here. It was like a 2-score game, and it was probably nearing the end of the third quarter. One of my buddies texted me and said, like, LSU's about to get run out of here. Like, it's about to get bad. And I was like, no, just wait on it. And then Costello proceeds to throw an interception. They turn the ball over. LSU goes down and score. I'm like, all right, I think LSU's going to start getting on a roll. But like you said, man, the finishing power here from Mississippi State was really impressive. Kudos to those guys, right? Costello, you mentioned with the interview afterwards, a lot of raw emotion in his voice. Mike Leach showing that the air raid can win in the SEC, like big steps. I like how you had to throw in the Florida mention already in your answer there, David, because, man, if people see our group chat, David Turner's got to be a Florida Gators fan. And, he was boasting about these dudes, 51-35 victory for the Gators over the new look Lane Kiffin Ole Miss football team, right? really impressive, right? Because we talk about offensive firepower. Kyle Trask throws for 400 yards. Kyle Pitts has 170 yards to tight ends. I know you liked number one, the little slot receiver, gadget
Ooh,
guy. Yeah,
yeah.
Kadarius Toney, who's a really nice athlete as well. Florida's defense didn't show up too much, but hey, I was really impressed by Matt Corral, the quarterback from Ole Miss, who I felt like he had some really nice flashes during that game. Ole Miss has a wide receiver named Elijah Moore. So we definitely got that offensive firepower. General thoughts from you, David? I want to hear why you think, and it sounds like from all accounts, you think Florida might be a real player this year.
I really do. I think what they have on offense and defense is really interesting to me. And when I look at, when I watch, again, Trask is the real deal. Like, the way he throws the ball, the way he whips it around. I mean, the guy was delivering really nice receiver-friendly balls all the way through the game. I mean, they were just dimes. He was throwing through coverage, into coverage. He was making great reads, setting his feet in the pocket. And what he did really well was climb up in the pocket. So, he wasn't staying back where the pressure was coming. He was able to hitch up, climb up in the pocket, shorten the distance on throws, and get the ball out in a very timely fashion. He wasn't holding it very long. He was under 5 seconds getting the ball out. I know 4 is, where you really want 3.5, 4. But, he let his guys work to get open, and the offensive line gave him a bunch of time. I mean, their center, Brett Hagee. Oh, now, come on now. That guy, whoo, he's going to be a baller at the next level.
You like him, huh? You like him.
Dude, he all day didn't give up one pressure. He made all the calls. He was strong in the middle. Guys were trying to bull him. They couldn't push him back. I mean, he's what you're looking for in an NFL center. I think he's 6'3" and like 310, 312 right now with enough room to grow into a nice 320 body. His arms appeared to be at least 32s, maybe 31 and a halves. So it's right where you want all the NFL measurables when you're watching the film on a guy like that. Then here I'm talking about the center. I haven't even gotten to Toney or Pitts or any of the other playmakers. I was just up front talking about the hog maulers, giving them their due because, they all did a really good job up there. The tackles did well, but I was just really impressed with Hagee up front. But, Trask, I think he had, 5 or 6 touchdowns. Pitts had 4 of them. Toney, yeah, he's a great gadget slot receiver, return guy. His stop and start motion was so fluid and easy for him. His change of direction and he's stronger than what you would think. He had one reverse where he came around the corner and some guy met him head on, and he just went right through him. He bowled him over.
He's got a little Percy Harvin to him, He's kind of like in that mold.
Exactly. That's a great call, great comparison right there, pulling the Percy train out of there. But he definitely did. He was good. And Jacob Copeland, there was a sophomore receiver, Grimes. Come on, Grimes made some great plays. So they're stacked on offense all the way through. I like the running backs a lot too, Davis and Pierce. Pierce ran hard downhill.
Davis took somebody's ankles one time in the open field too. He
can make the hard cuts. Like it was just he just gave a dead leg on somebody and they went missing for a while. It was like he screwed them up. But if you look on the defensive side, you say the Brenton Cox Jr. This guy was in the backfield all day as a sophomore coming off the edge. He was back there causing trouble and havoc all day. Vontrell Miller, the short little linebacker, kind of
love him. That dude is
explosive. Little Sam Mills look-alike inside guy. Okay, Panthers, hear what I'm saying? A little Sam Mills look-alike inside there. All right, you got that inside tip. You listening, Panthers? I got you. So just saying, he's a little guy that was all over the field, explosive, launching into players, making tackles sideline to sideline. Even late in the game, you could tell he was tired, but he was still exploding through tackles. So, it was a lot of fun to watch this game. And I really think that they have enough on defense to really give the SEC some fits in that offense. It's going to cause matchups. Again, they can run the ball downhill with a physical line like this. They give Trask time to throw the ball to, Pitts, Toney, Copeland, Grimes. It's going to cause them fits. So, a lot of weapons here to be paying attention to for the Gators.
Yeah, and I was joking about that defense because there was so much turnover again. We talked about Jabari Zuniga getting drafted, Jonathan Greener. The defensive end position was a little bare coming into the season. Brenton Cox, like you said, the transfer from Georgia, really had some nice play. I mean, he had that back-to-back play where he batted the ball down. He got the TFL kind of cutting inside on the inside move. Really impressive for his first time in a Florida Gators uniform. I love that Ventrell Miller dude, man. I really did. I was talking a little bit about him in the summer because he is just such a physical run defender, and he's not a big guy, but the explosiveness that he's able to create in such short spaces is absolutely absurd. I want to ask you, David, because, I love Kyle Pitts. I think he's a top 20 potential player at the tight end position. We're talking about 6'6", 240, athlete, can get up. He does a little bit of everything as a receiving threat. I like Tony as well. We gave him a little Percy Harvin comp. He's in that similar body type. One guy – now, Kyle Trask, I have a comp for you, and I need your instant reaction. I'm putting you on the spot tonight, David Turner. Kyle Trask, I called him bargain bin Carson Wentz as a joke because of the look, right? He's got the arm sleeve, but here's the actual comparison. Nick Foles. That's it. That's my one right there. That's it. Touch, accuracy down the field. Not an incredible athlete, but he maneuvers well in the pocket. I don't think he has a cannon for an arm as far as short to intermediate velocity, but I think that it's adequate enough and his timing is good enough inside the pocket.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm not a big Foles guy, so maybe that's what's sour in my mouth. I'm not a guy who
Philly? No, Philly?
No, I'm not a big Foles guy. Like, I have other friends that are really big Foles guys, and they like him a lot. I'm not a Foles guy. When I was watching Trask throw the ball and manage the field and do everything he was doing, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he's got a huge arm. So for me, I was looking at the motion and everything more like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or even like a old school Trent Dilfer, because that's kind of like the body style and type I saw when I was looking at him. I saw those kind of motions and throws with his read and is be able to read and move up in the pocket. Like, that was one thing that Dilfer and those guys did really well, is they didn't have great mobility, so they move side to side and up in the pocket to get away from the rush, but never looking to run and escape. So for me, those comparisons to me hit me a little bit more than Wentz, because I think this kid might have a better feel for the passing game than Wentz does.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, you just gave me a flashback again. I talk about this every time we're on, but now I'm thinking Brad Johnson. I'm thinking some early 2000 quarterbacks now.
Gannon
Chris
was
Chandler popped in my head for some reason. Chris Chandler, the former Falcons quarterback, who I really liked a little bit. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you can even compare this guy to the Giants guy a little bit, who they got up there.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And obviously he took a really nice step forward with the game that he had. I don't know if you've heard the backstory on him, David, but he backed up the Eric King when he was in high school, the quarterback down in Miami now. So he hadn't started until last year. He had not started a football game since he was a freshman in high school, if you can believe that. So it had been 4 years plus 7 years, 6 or 7 years since he'd started a football game. And now, hey, he's on the verge, right? Maybe he's that big riser in the senior class. Looks like it might possibly be. Before we get Ian Williams on here, we want to transition. We're a couple minutes late on getting him in here, but we want to transition to some college football for this weekend before we get Ian on. So, couple upsets this past week. We didn't even talk about that, right? Oklahoma going down to Kansas State. What an exciting football game that was. Their young gun, Spencer Rattler, threw 3 interceptions for Oklahoma. Really struggled down the stretch. Kansas State, advantageous, right? Chris Kleiman, North Dakota State head coach, is now there at Kansas State doing a great job. Texas Tech.
That's the second time he beat him.
Second year in a row, right?
In two in a row. He's beat him twice in a row, 2 in a year. Yeah.
Yeah, so that game, obviously, coming off a huge upset after Kansas State lost to Arkansas State in the opener. So, obviously a huge turnaround there. And now we have then facing off against Texas Tech, who, had a really competitive football game against Texas this past weekend as well. It was a shootout. Their quarterback, Alum Bowman, did some really nice stuff, even though they lost the game. Now, 2.5-point favorite for Kansas State. We have the over-under at 63.5. So, David, before we get Ian in here, just general thoughts. Are Kansas State, you buying them as the favorite? You think Texas Tech has enough firepower to maybe get the perceived upset? What's kind of your thoughts on this game?
Oh, man, that Texas Tech game went back and forth. I mean, neither Texas or them showed any kind of defense, to be honest with you. And I really thought Texas Tech was going to run away with it. I think they had the lead, 15 points in the last 3 or 4 minutes there. So I thought they had it. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes did too, because he was tweeting out like crazy, thinking they were going to beat Texas. He was really excited to see that come down the pipe. But, it was disappointed in the end. Texas squeezed it out. I think Texas Tech has a lot of firepower, and I don't know if Texas or Kansas State, I should say, sorry about that, Kansas State does have the stop power to take on a Texas Tech. And I believe they're down in Texas. It's going to be humid. It's going to be hot. So, I think Texas Tech winds up taking this game, and I just don't see them having the firepower or the stopping power to what I saw at Texas Tech last week.
Yeah. I think I would take Texas Tech. It's a Big 12 game, so even if I don't 100% believe it, I'm going to take the over just for the nature of the conference with how bad defensively they play. So give me Alum Bowman and Texas Tech, and I would take the over there. Texas Tech wins outright in this game. I think Kansas State's just that sneaky team. They usually play pretty solid defense, in terms of Big 12 football. But give me Texas Tech this week.
Yeah, and I like that big old receiver they got there at Texas Tech. What is his name? Basher?
Basher. He's Nathan Basher's nephew, apparently, the former Chicago Bear corner. So
yeah, I mean, this kid's like 6'9", it looks like. He's probably 6'6", but he looks like he's 6'9". He makes great plays and adjustment to the ball. I mean, they got a decent offensive line. It wasn't getting completely dismembered, but I mean, their defense had no stop power. None.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, they got nothing on the defensive side of the ball. They do have Jack Anderson, who's a pretty solid right guard playing on that offensive line. You mentioned TJ Vasher. That dude's 6'6". I think he's only listed at like 190 or 200 pounds, though. So that 6'6" looks a lot longer on that thin of a frame, which is pretty funny to watch. But, yeah, he's Nathan Vasher's nephew, so there should be no surprise that he's athletic. He has those athletic genes. We're going to get to some more pick'ems in a minute. But, of course, we want to bring on our special guest here, a really fun one for me personally as a Notre Dame fan, Notre Dame supporter my entire life. We have Mr. Ian Williams, who is getting connected right now, who is former Notre Dame Fighting Irish defensive tackle from 2007 to 2010. So he played under head coach Charlie Weiss for a few years and then Brian Kelly for his final season. After he finished up, was a very good player for the Irish. He spent 5 seasons in the Bay Area with the San Francisco 49ers. Best year came, of course, in 2015, where he led all defensive linemen that year on the team with 65 total tackles. Ian's now a sports analyst for NBC Sports for NBC Sports Bay Area and 95.7 The Game. As Ian is getting connected here, David, I know you're really excited to get Ian on here. I'm excited for him being a former Irish. What can we expect here from Mr. Williams once we get him connected finally?
Well, for me, I'm a huge Irish guy too. You forget, I go back in the day, watching the Irish when I was a young lad out there in the Bay Area. And guys like Aaron Taylor came out of De La Salle High School and played played over there. So I got to watch Aaron play at the Irish and other players that I really just loved and admired being there. So the program I got to meet Lou Holtz one time. I mean, it was just infectious as a young guy. I was a huge Irish guy. So I still, like, when my son was born, all I bought him was Notre Dame gear. He was in New York wearing Notre Dame gear everywhere. So this is really exciting for me to meet Ian and talk to him tonight and be here on this platform. I'm very thankful that he's taken us up on the opportunity to be here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're welcoming Mr. Ian Williams in right now. If I wasn't wearing this dope Mavs sports gear, I would be wearing an Irish shirt right now. Ian, appreciate you coming on, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's going to be great. I hope you're strapped up and unmuzzled and ready to get after it.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm here for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ian, like I said, man, I got Irish tattoos up and down my arm, man. Fighting Irish tattoos. It's something that's been with me and my dad for a long time here. So I'm really excited to have a former Irish on here with us. And I think that the best place maybe to start with, man, is just kind of reliving your years. Because I said, you were with Charlie Weiss for the majority of your Notre Dame career, and with Brian Kelly. Obviously, Brian Kelly has continued his tenure until now and has been very successful over the last couple of years, getting them back to 10 plus wins. Relive for me just some of your favorite moments as an Irish and just kind of what you take away from your time up there in South Bend.
I could tell you when I first went up there, I didn't expect, for it to be as special as it meant for me. But, growing up in Florida, I didn't really pay attention to Notre Dame or anything, South Bend related it. Because I was down in Florida, I had 3 other schools around me. I had Florida State, Florida, and Miami around me. So, when I actually finally got on campus for my first official visit, that's when everything hit me. It was like, all right, like this is really special up here. And I see what people are talking about. I see, why it's such a national brand and such a worldwide brand. And then I got to be on the field for the first game. We played Georgia Tech. Even though that first year we struggled a little bit, it was still just fun just being out there, just wearing that helmet. And no matter what, we were going to be on NBC, prime time. We could be 2 and whatever. You know what I'm saying? We will still be on prime time. Like nobody wants to watch us, but we out there. But once Brian Kelly got there, my senior year, I could definitely feel a change in the mentality of the team, especially on offense and defense. And I feel like just that first year ended up propelling them a few years later that got them to the national championship. And then, what he's been doing now, getting the team, to the college football playoff and, competing every year, top 10 finishes and stuff like that. So, the team's, a player or 2 away or, a couple games away from, getting back to that overall national championship stage and national championship level. So it's been fun to watch the guys this season so far. And Ian Book and the defense is looking really good out there. So it's been fun to watch them.
Absolutely. I need to ask you, Ian, being a Florida guy, do you ever get used to that Indiana weather? That's what I need to know.
I really didn't. Once you get up there and it's you feel that cold weather when you start to hit like October, November, and I grew up in Florida my whole life, and it was my first time actually being up north. So that first winter, my freshman year, it was truly something. I tell you that, and it made me appreciate the warm weather in Florida and the springtime and the summer because it makes you appreciate the changing of the seasons. You're like, man, it's been snowing, it's been cold for about 4 months now. I'm ready for spring. And then, man, it's been, kind of sloshy out. It's been just raining, a little bit. I'm ready for summer, it's been too hot out here. I'm ready for fall. And the next thing it starts to cool down a little bit. So it makes you appreciate your seasons.
Absolutely. And now doing what you're obviously well-versed in the San Francisco Niner world. You're there, you're in the Bay, and you're doing the games and everything for them. How, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful because I grew up knowing like the Bay Area is where I'm from, went to De La Salle High School, graduated from San Francisco State, grew up a Niner fan. I worked for the Raiders. But how did the Niners beat the Giants as bad as they beat them with all the backups and like that? Are the Giants that bad, or were we just sleeping on how good the Niners are?
Well, you have to go into why the Giants got their butts beat like that. Well, they're a very bad football team. They have no identity. They don't have Saquon Barkley. They don't have Sterling Shepard. They don't have a lot of players on defense that have played a lot of football. They have a pretty good defensive line. But besides that, they're pretty much void, and they have everything even. And they got a couple guys, but they're not the same team of what we used to see with, Justin Tuck and Eli Manning and those guys. And, you have to give the 49ers credit. You play, who's on the schedule at the time and during that time that the league assigns it. So, if they're struggling, if they have injuries, it is what it is. The Niners have a lot of injuries too, from quarterback to receiver to tight end to defensive end to linebacker to cornerback. So, they're banged up all over the place too. So they didn't make excuses out there, even with all the injuries and playing on the same field as Bosa and Solomon Thomas getting hurt. So I feel like definitely this was a game to win. And these next couple of games for them, they have the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday night on football, Sunday Night Football. And then the week after, they play the Miami Dolphins. And then after that, they really start to hit their schedule where they play Seattle and the Patriots and Green Bay. And pretty much every team from after the Dolphins is a playoff caliber team. So I know they're going to be excited to get a lot of those guys back, especially Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel is supposed to be practicing again tomorrow. So I know 49er fans are definitely excited to have those guys back out there in uniform.
Yeah, I was just like, I knew the Giants weren't loaded, but when I saw 36-9, I mean, I was like, whoa, because like you said, they've lost. I mean, the Niners have, I want to say, 7 or 8 guys, and 6 of them are starters that are on IR for right now, and they didn't play in the game. And then they lost the other tight end during the game that coach said he's going to be out, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. So, they're just really banged up, and I was just like, wow. I didn't know. I mean, the Giants, to me, they were in the first 2 games up to the last throw in both those games. So I thought there was going to be a really competitive team coming out, but man, they didn't have any fight in them. Like you said, I was really disappointed to see that.
Yeah. I mean, the Giants are, Jason Garrett, and he's just trying to figure out, who's his weapons. He has Golden Tate up there. I posted on his Instagram the other day, like, hey, G Tate, take it easy on my boys this weekend. But he couldn't really do much with that defense that they had against Daniel Jones and Devontae Freeman. They couldn't really do much on offense. So they're just trying to figure out who they are, because they lost Saquon Barkley, and they're going to have a tough rest of the season. They're probably going to have a top 3, top 5 pick.
Oh, it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear for me. It's hard to hear. I work there, so it was like, I'm always rooting for my friends and my boys, but that one's hard for me to hear. They're going to be struggling that much. So here's another question for you. Seattle Seahawks beat Dallas 38-31. The week before, they beat New England. Are they real? Are they for real?
The Cowboys or the Seahawks?
Oh, the Seahawks.
The Seahawks. No, they're for real. Russell Wilson. I could tell you this. It was hell playing against them back when I played, and just trying to scheme against them, because if you get them outside of the pocket, which is normally what you want to do with a quarterback, either you get them outside of the pocket, they can't throw on a run. He can do that very well, and he can throw the deep ball very well. And they drafted some really good receivers to fit that style of offense with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, a draft pick a couple years ago. And those 2 guys have just been, beasts in that system that they try to do, spread you out, be able to run the football with Marshawn Lynch back in the day. Now they use Chris Carson, and then they throw the ball deep when you try to bring that extra safety down into the box to stop the run. So they have that. And then last season they had Jadeveon Clowney. They got Bobby Wagner. They got a defense over there. Even though they may not have Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas anymore, they still have, that feel. They still have that atmosphere there, even without the fans. And they still have, Ken Norton. He's a defensive coordinator now. So they still have that Seattle Seahawks, mentality that they had when all the guys were there earlier in the decade, in the middle part of the decade when they went to the Super Bowl. So I would definitely say, they're definitely a top 5, top 6 team in the NFL because, Russell Wilson and then what they can do on any given Sunday.
Yeah, I got Russell as the MVP this year. I mean, he's poised to come in to me and be the MVP. If he doesn't, there's only a few players that are out there, maybe like an Aaron Rodgers or, if the Bills guy winds up, keeping his pace up all year. But what Russell's been doing the first couple of weeks is just like, woo, like he's really, cooking, as they say up there. So, I just think the one thing that Seahawks miss is a pass rush. If Schneider can get on the trade market and find a taker to get some pass rush in there to help them restock that pass rush for them, I think that would really be the key to success for them there.
Yeah, if they would have had, Jadeveon Clowney back for another season, I understand he wanted a lot of money. I think he wanted like 20-something million, but he just nobody was going to give him that because of his injury history and his production history. So, I thought, Seattle at the end of the day would eventually get him back because just like you said, you need some kind of pass rush. And at the moment, they had Bruce Irvin. They thought they could bring him back. He had his injury. So, they're trying to figure out what they can do, on that defensive line to be able to generate some kind of pressure on the quarterback. So I definitely look for them to, bring some more pressures and bring some more blitzes throughout the season. And, when they do that, they're going to leave Shaquille Griffin in the other corner, Trey Flowers on the island at times. And those guys are big and they're fast and they're rangy, so they can do it. So it's kind of pick your poison. Do you want to play to their strengths or you want to play to your strengths? So I know offenses are definitely going to, have a field day, or not a field day, but a tough day trying to scheme against that offense and defense that they have in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian, we saw another division rival for the 49ers. The LA Rams are getting off to a pretty solid start, 2-1. They had an almost miraculous 20, they were down 28-3, that infamous, score, and almost came back and beat the Buffalo Bills this week, eventually falling 35-32 with a little controversy at the end. I have a two-part question for you. One, do you think that the Rams are a legitimate contender in this division this year after their pretty solid start here? And are you buying for the first time in I don't know how many years that the Buffalo Bills can take the division over the New England Patriots for what it has felt like forever now?
I definitely think the Rams are better than they were last year. I don't know if they're better than they were when they went to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they would have needed Todd Gurley to be more healthy in that game, and they probably would have played a little bit more differently. But as of right now, they have, speed and they have weapons at receiver. Jared Goff's playing very well, and Sean McVay. I feel like that year that they struggled last year, I felt it helped them, know what adversity is coming off of a Super Bowl and have to deal with it. And also they were old at the offensive line and at certain positions, and they had to make some changes schematically, on their depth charts. And I feel like they've done that. And then they have two great players on defense in Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. So, once you can shut off one side of the field with Jalen Ramsey, and then you have a defensive presence in Aaron Donald up front, you're pretty loaded on defense. You just got to have some guys around them that can do their jobs, and those two guys would make the whole defense work. And then on offense, Jared Goff I feel like he's starting to settle in, and I think last year, he went through his struggles, and I feel like they looked at a lot of film and a lot of tape this year. You didn't have to be in training camp or OTAs for hours of the day. So I know guys were at home, especially on their iPad studying a lot of film, and I know Jared Goff was. And you can definitely tell he looks a lot better. He looks more comfortable in that offense, and they're running the ball a little bit better. They made a draft pick with Cam Akers out of Florida State this past draft, and I think he got injured, unfortunately. But Malcolm Brown, their backup running back, who's actually kind of a starter, he's playing actually very well for them and fitting that scheme that they like to run over there. So they definitely have what it takes to compete and definitely get back into the playoffs. And then Buffalo. They've been building up there for a few years. They finally got Josh Allen. They finally got a quarterback that they can do multiple things with and not just throw the football out there, because it's Buffalo. You're not in Florida. You're not in a dome where, you're going to have all times of the football season to be able to throw the football or do what you want through the air. It's going to get cold up there. You're going to need to build a certain offensive line and build a certain team that can run the football when it gets cold, because you're not going to be able to throw the ball 40 yards down the field when it's snowing and it's freezing up there. You just can't put that on guys. You don't want to put that on yourself. And, they've drafted Josh Allen. They've drafted great guys on defense, Ed Oliver, some young guys, Terrell Edmonds. They got the corner out there. I'm tripping over his name right now. Tre'Davious White from LSU. So they got some guys on defense, and they got some guys on offense. And I think the best thing that they did this past offseason was trade for Stephon Diggs and add just another element to that passing game, because Josh Allen is definitely a dual threat quarterback, and you wouldn't expect it because of how well he throws the football. But he's definitely making some things happen with his legs, and when defense just try to hone in on him and try to bring an extra guy up, and you got Stephon Diggs, you got a bona fide star out there on the outside that you have to respect. So they got some flavor out there in Buffalo, I can tell you that. And I know they're going to definitely try to get on New England's head, and finally take back that division. And I know Buffalo fans, and I feel like Buffalo up there needs it. I remember watching the 30 for 30 of the 4 times they went up to the Super Bowl and lost. I can only imagine going 4 times and losing every single time. I can only imagine. So
the best part of that, Ian, the best part of that whole story right there is something you don't know, but you should. My cousin my direct cousin, one of my best friends, Mark Spinelli, who was supposed to be on the show last week, was a Bills fan and still is a Bills fan, and he's been a Bills fan since those days. So all 4 of those Super Bowls, I got to go to Super Bowl parties with him and watch him think they were going to win and talk trash going into it. And those were all those years I was in high school, and it was just like, and then I would watch his whole world come crashing down at the end. He wore 56. Everybody thought it was for Lawrence Taylor. No, it was for Tally. He loved Bruce Smith. He loved the K-gun offense. Like right now, I hope you're listening, Nelly, because I know you're gonna want to call in and talk to me. But he fumbled all those Super Bowls, and he still laments on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, losing those right there, I'm sure, like it just pains you. You just don't lose a feeling like that. That stays with you.
He closes his eyes and sees Scott Norwood. What was it? Wide right, wide left? Scott Norwood, David?
Yeah, right, left.
Oh, man. I mean, I have a similar one, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but I live right outside of Philadelphia, and I'm surrounded by Eagles fans, and they had that 3-year stretch with McNabb where they went to the NFC Championship game and they lost. They went back again. They lost again. They went a third time. They lost again. Finally, the next year, they made it to the NFC Championship game. They went to the Super Bowl. They lost that. But, that's for another story. Completely different one there. And we talked a little bit about the Bills potentially unseating New England this year. New England had a 36-20 victory over the Raiders. Are you buying into the Cam Newton resurgence? I know he's been obviously fighting injuries over the last couple years. Is Cam Newton officially back? Are you buying into him potentially taking this team to another division championship?
I mean, I wouldn't even say that, he's back. I mean, I don't even think he ever actually, that talent actually never left him. He just needed the opportunity to get healthy, and he finally got that this offseason. He didn't have to, throw the football as much as he normally would. So he got his shoulder got to heal up a little bit more. And then he went to a team that, they have the offensive weapons around him. They have a great coach. You're going to have a great defense year in and year out every year with the New England Patriots. You just need a quarterback to go in and manage the offense and be able to put up some points, and then also be able to do some things with his legs, which Bill Belichick couldn't do with Tom Brady for almost 20 years. He had to change up his offense. He can only call certain things, and over time, defenses catch on to that, and it gets harder and harder to move the ball down the field. But once you add an element with the legs that Cam Newton has, same thing with Josh Allen. It's an added element to the offense that people haven't seen when they normally go up against New England-led offense. And, now you have to worry about Rex Burkhead and, guys like James White and Sony Michel back there and Julian Edelman. So there's so many weapons that they have up there that, we've seen for, the past decade, just making plays up there. But now they have a different guy in a different, style that's still going to be able to make plays up there.
And now we're transitioning to week 4 here. And we have of course, the San Francisco 49ers are now taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, like you mentioned a little bit earlier. Eagles are a little riddled with injuries like the 49ers are right now, coming off of a tie, which was the most anticlimactic finish I probably have ever seen in a game in my life. I can't think of another one. Ian, what is your general thought?
They punted with 13 seconds to go.
I couldn't even watch. I couldn't even watch. Did you hear Doug Peterson's explanation after the game too? It hurt my heart. It hurt my head. It hurt my heart.
I just don't understand. If you're a competitor and to be in this business, you got to be a competitive individual. You have 13 seconds to go in the game. How do you not? It's 4th and 12. Make a play. Like give your quarterback the ball to make a play.
Well, it was also
if it's 4th and 12, and where were they on the field when it happened?
It would have been a 64-yarder.
So think about it. All right, so you got roughly 13 seconds left. So you kick that field goal from your 50-yard line. All right, so roughly there should be 6 to 7 seconds left on that clock about time the ball hits the ground. So an offense would have 5 seconds to run a play and get roughly 10 yards, call a timeout, and now you're on the 40-yard line, and now you can kick a field goal and lose that game. So instead of trying to win the game and try to go for it on 4th and 12, it's smarter to punt it and at least take your L and know that you're going to tie instead of taking a loss if you mess around and a bad play happens and they get a chance to kick a field goal.
I wasn't talking about them kicking a field goal. I was talking about them taking a shot to get the first down and then call their timeout to get their field goal kicker some extra yards to make it, like you said, a 2-second field goal when they're in better position to kick the field goal and put it in the quarterback's hand to be like, hey, you got a 4th and 12 here, son. You got to go. You got to nut up. You got to make the play and dial up something that's the best play in the playbook for a 4th and 10 type style and give them a shot. Because even if you gain 10 yards there and you run off those 5 or 6 seconds and they stop you, you've put 10 more yards on what they would have to gain to kick a field goal. So now it's like almost as good as a punt because you're only leaving them with 5 seconds and they got to move the ball, 30 yards before their guy can kick it.
Mm-hmm. How many picks has Carson Wentz thrown these past few games?
Oh, don't talk about that. That's the negative. Let's talk about
but I'm not gonna call a play on 4th and 12 if I think my quarterback ain't up to the game. You know what I'm saying? If I think he's gonna, not play, not do the right call and throw a pick, I'm just gonna call it safe and
that's the trust in the quarterback.
Time.
That's why you gotta, again, if you don't trust your quarterback, you punt. And that's a hard thing to tell a young quarterback week 3 of the season is I don't trust you, and now the rest of the time we're going for it. And you see teams like the Bengals and different other teams that have, rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks going for it in those situations where their coaches, at least if they screw it up, the coaches showed confidence in them that they're going to do it, When
you reach and you draft Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round and you just paid your quarterback buku amounts of money, that should show you what you need to know all right there where the trust is.
Right. I mean, they didn't trade up to get him more weapons and a receiver. They could have done it, but they go and take a quarterback in the 2nd round. Yeah, I hear you.
Well,
I hear you.
We are all 3 different sides on this one because I would have kicked a field goal because I would like to say, Ian, the Cincinnati Bengals did not have a timeout left after that either. They were out of timeouts. So I'm working. You have to get 20 yards. And what did David say? 5 seconds and try to clock the ball? That's impossible, my friend. That is not going to work. Yeah. So the Eagles are a mess, though. Real quick to add to that, Jalen Hurts. Right now they have Avonte Maddox starting at corner opposite Darius Slay. They have no safeties right now. Rodney McLeod is hurt every other day. Jalen Mills is playing safety for the first time in his career. They could have had Jeremy Chin. They could have had Christian Fulton. Whole lot of mess right now in Philadelphia, to say the least, heading into their matchup with San Francisco. And I want to ask this, Ian, because it's obviously been a crazy offseason, with everything going on, the pandemic, and we've seen, numbers in better areas than others. Want to ask about just your general thoughts of the climate of America right now and, just the state of flux and uncertainty that we're trying to get through right now.
I'm just glad, things are starting to get better. Things are starting to look, you can see that the light at the end of the tunnel now, with, everything starting to open back up. Florida's opening back up. Out here in California, things are opening back up. My gym and, restaurants are opening back up. So, people are going back to work and the economy is getting a little bit better. And, there are a lot of pharmaceutical companies are, close to, either, in their 2nd stage or 3rd stage of trials and stuff like that. So, everything's looking up right now, but, there's a lot that has gone on, this whole off season for sports and for the world in general. So, from the pandemic to the protests to, just pretty much anything that you can think of that has happened in 2020, it's been a wild off season. It's been a wild year so far, and we still have a few months to go. But, for the most part, I'm just glad, things are actually looking a little bit more better.
With your career, I mean, you were a dominant player, right? You were just like you're a dominant NFL player. I think our listeners should hear a little bit about your career and then, again, how it ended and all that, because it's a great message for people, or a story for people to know if they don't know.
So my best year was 2015. So I first got to San Francisco 2011. I was undrafted. Had suffered a knee injury in my senior year in college. So that kind of dinged me a little bit, and then my size also dinged me a little bit too. So went undrafted, but it was probably the best thing that happened to me. I came into a good situation in San Francisco where we had that dominant defense under Harbaugh early part of last decade. And I was able to sit and learn, from a lot of good players, a lot of great players that we had on offense and defense. And I just took the opportunity to soak up, everything that was happening. I was on the sidelines for every play. I practiced against these guys. I was in the meeting rooms with these guys. So I got better every year. And then 2015 was my best year. And then as I was about to finally sign a long-term extension with the Niners or another team at the time, I was in free agency. So I was going to take my visits and, see which team, really was going to be the best fit for me. And I had eventually, my ankle, started bothering me. I had broke my ankle a couple years before against Seattle. It was my first start. Guy dove up my ankle, broke my ankle, and I had to have a whole replacement done. And the pins and a plate put in my ankle, and eventually got that taken out. But I got an infection in my ankle, a staph MRSA infection in my ankle, and it got worse over time. And then eventually in 2016, that's where it like really spiraled out of control. And a few months after the season, I ended up having surgery and had an external fixator put on it. And it was a long rehab back. It was a long 2016 and 17. And I was going to try to rehab to be able to come back once I got the fixator off. And once I actually started, moving around or trying to move around, or what I assumed I was moving around, it just, it wasn't what it needed to be to go out there and hold a double team or be able to do what I needed to do on the defensive line, or feel safe out there, playing out there with, full pads and live speed. So eventually called it a career. And it's been a rough transition, just dealing with everything that happened, because I was at the height of my career. The game was finally starting to slow down for me, and I was actually starting to play very, very well. And I was going to be a cornerstone for the defense going into the next. I'd still be playing right now. I would have been in between DeForest and Eric Armstead. So and it would have been fun to still be out here and last year, go to the Super Bowl and be on that team and have a chance to win it and actually be a starter and be a contributor to a Super Bowl contending team. It would have been fun, but it's been a blessing, to be able to see the game from a different side now. You see the game from a different level when you're, a fan on the outside, or as what I'm doing right now, or more of an analyst and kind of breaking down the film and breaking down what guys are doing. It's been fun to, kind of see it from the outside in, and then also, being able to, be a partner with Applied Silver and, their goals and what they're trying to do in sports and in medicine and hospitality, and just trying to make the world a better place and try to help, especially guys in the locker room or in the hospital setting, which I was. And I saw that. I was in ICU for roughly a month. So I know how the hospital works, and it's just a blessing to fall into the certain things that I have going on right now. So it's been a fun decade for me. Since I got out here, I feel like the Bay Area has done well and treated me right out here and stuff like that. So after everything that I've had go on that was positive for me, I had a lot of negatives, but at the same time, I learned a lot from those negatives. And those negatives have, I'm 31 years old now, so those negatives have definitely made me mature a lot faster than I expected.
What's this Applied Silver that you were just mentioned?
So Applied Silver, so they have a flagship product called Silver Clean, which uses silver ions to kill bacteria such as Candida or Staph or MRSA. And finally, our testing came back that it also fights coronavirus also, or any other coronavirus, especially COVID-19. So knowing that, the climate that we're in right now, the atmosphere that we're in right now, and, a product like Silver Clean from Applied Silver, being with, multiple teams in the NFL, college teams, being in hospitals, it's definitely, something that you have to keep a monitor or keep an eye out on, because this company is definitely coming out of nowhere and definitely going to, disturb the industry because of what it's doing right now and the studies behind it. The teams that we have right now are doing very great, and especially with the COVID and other infections and stuff like that. So it's just exciting to see where Applied Silver is going, and especially the product and the future that Applied Silver and their board team and their management team is looking for.
Well, that's great. I mean, we've taken up a lot of your time, and I appreciate all of it tonight. I really want to thank. If you got any parting shots, tell the folks how to find you on social media. Tell them what you're up to and everything. Just let them know it's your time now.
I appreciate you guys for having me, man. It's been fun. Always love talking football. You can find me on Twitter, iWilliams95, or Instagram, iWilliams93. And if not, I'll see you when I see you.
Well, look in your mailbox. You're going to have some Mav gear coming your way.
Cool. I appreciate you guys, man. It's fun talking to y'all.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate you.
All right, y'all. Peace.
Again, that was Mr. Ian Williams, former Notre Dame Fighting Irish, San Francisco 49er, now works as a sports analyst for NBC Sports Bay Area. I keep tripping up on that. Now a sports analyst for NBC Sports Bay Area and 95.7 The Game. David, some quick takeaways from Ian. Really well spoken, right? He, covered a lot of topics. We kept him for a long time, man. He was very willing to talk ball with us for a little bit. What was your main takeaways?
Well, as Ian sees it, I mean, he sees it from a player perspective as well as from a black male's perspective. And he said there's a light at the end of the tunnel. He says he sees things that are coming in a positive way, in a good way, and we're coming out of it with the economy coming back a little bit and people getting back out there. I'm more skeptical as far as the economy and the pandemic goes than he seems to be. But again, being around the team as much as he's around them, and as hearing from the guys as much as he hears from, he obviously brought a different perspective on that to the show, which I appreciate, because that's an insider view that we don't get from a player stance as much as we would like. So that was my biggest takeaway from him. And hearing how it's an even playing field out there too, with all the injuries and everything going on. Everybody's got to deal with them, and you just got to line up and play, which is a fun mentality. But it seems like it's, with the Titans closing their facility today till Saturday, and the Vikings closing it today too, I think there's going to be competitive advantages. Obviously, if your team tests positive and then the league closes down your facility for you, obviously you can't practice and stuff. So those competitive advantages are going to start peaking up here a little bit.
Yeah, and that goes from an NFL perspective, college football. I mean, Notre Dame had to cancel this past weekend, their game against Wake Forest. What was the number, David? 20, 25?
They have 25 currently under protocol and 14 from the last testing cycle. So they had, 11 before that and now 14 more. Yeah,
and it's obviously troubling times. I feel like we were – it wasn't normal, but it was like, at least we're seeing some semblance of football, and now kind of the negativity is kind of popping back in our heads a little bit. Want to get into more of these games. Before we do, we want you to take a minute to stop and say thank you for having us in your ear for Mavs Sports Take. If you want to hear more from us, from the two of us, you'll definitely want to check out a season pass to our Friday night scout school. That's the weekly class David and I teach to anyone who wants to start watching football through a scout's eye. More and more you hear about West Coast style offense, but do you really know what that means? Join us in class this week, Friday night, where we'll be talking passing schemes, including the West Coast offense and vertical passing game. Friday Night Scout School is your pathway to understanding football at a higher level. We were talking about some college football before Mr. Ian Williams. Big shout out to him again for coming on with us. Just got done with Kansas State, Texas Tech. Another interesting game. SEC opponents, we have University of Georgia, 6.5-point favorites, going to take on the Auburn Tigers. Over-under is set at 45. We saw Georgia really struggle. We had Jamie Newman opt out, quarterback. They had a young kid, Dwan Mathis. Stetson Bailey came in and played some quarterback too. Offense really struggled, but they still were able to eventually get to a 37-10 victory in their game this past weekend. Auburn, a little hit or miss. Quarterback Bo Nix, sophomore, had some good moments. I really like their wide receiver Seth Williams a ton. I think he is extremely talented. I'm a big fan of him. David, what are you expecting in this game? Are you buying the 6.5-point line? Do you think that this is a dogfight? What's kind of your general opinion of this game?
I don't know how it's 6.5. I think Auburn's more talented than that. I think Auburn is I don't know. Again, I think they're at home. So to be Auburn and -6.5 to a team that struggled and they have a young quarterback coming in, I would be, if I was Auburn, I'd be a little fired up for this game because I'd want to earn some respect on this one. But I watched a little bit of the Georgia game. I didn't get all the way through it because I was watching other games last week. And I think they have a really nice team. I think it's a little young in talent, and I believe that maybe a year from now that Georgia would be more inclined to be a tougher team coming at people. But for me, I think Auburn is a team that needs to come out and really earn some respect with this game and really put it down. Gus Malzahn always seems to maybe start a little slow and then build it up. Maybe that's how I always feel about him. And I think this might be the same type situation here. I just don't know. I'm a big fan of Georgia. I'm a big Dogs fan. I like them a lot, but with Gus Malzahn and what he's got going, I don't see them being a 6.5-point favorite on top of them here. And I want to say that this is going to wind up being. If you look up and down this Georgia offense, they got a lot of sophomores, juniors, only a couple seniors. So again, and even on defense, they got a lot of sophomores and juniors. I think this is a team for next year that I buy, but for this year, I think Auburn's going to wind up stealing this game, or not stealing, but winning it outright.
Yeah, when I saw this line, I was genuinely confused. Because Georgia, and this is speaking from an NFL draft perspective, guys I've seen, Georgia's safety, Richard LeCount, is a really good ball player. He's a very good player. They have a corner named Eric Stokes that I think is a potential first-round guy when all is said and done. Redshirt junior, very talented. They have a defensive tackle named Jordan Davis, who is talented. They have Monty Rice at linebacker that is a very good player. So they have a NFL prospect at every level of that defense, which, in most years, Georgia, they do. So the question, and they have Azeez Ojulari, who's a defensive end, plays some off-ball at times. He's kind of a hybrid-type player. So I get Georgia keeping this close, and I understand the over-under there set at 45 because I think Georgia does have a really talented defense. Georgia offensively this past game was ugly. It was ugly, ugly, ugly. They have a really nice wide receiver, and as you said, David, they have a lot of sophomores and juniors. They have a kid named George Pickens, who's a sophomore, who I think is going to be the real deal. Some people are already comparing him to A.J. Green, who came out of Georgia, obviously, a few years ago. So I think Georgia's going to keep this game close, but if I had to pick this game, I would pick Auburn outright in this game. I think that they have a little more veteran leadership. They have a nice defense, as always, some talented players on that side of the ball. And then, again, man, I really like Seth Williams a ton, the wide receiver. Even though I like Georgia's defensive backs, I think he's going to create some mismatches with a 6'3" frame. I don't know if I would even touch that over-under, but I would definitely, I think, at least take Auburn in that matchup. Moving on here, South Carolina, University of Florida, David's Florida Gators are playing by 17.5. He's doing the Gator chomp if you can't see him live right now. 17.5-point favorites, 57.5. That seems a little high to me. Let me start here by saying Florida has a ton of playmakers. Mr. Tony, we talked about him. Mr. Pitts, we talked about him. But I'll tell you right now, South Carolina could match up with them on the perimeter, if nothing else. They have my boy J.C. Horn, Joe Horn's son at corner, one of my favorite players in the class for 2021. Really talented corner. On the other side, they have and you're hearing this correct, David, a 6'4" cornerback, Israel Mukuamu, who I think is going to be a safety down the road. But either way, he is an NFL caliber defensive back So I think they're going to be able to match up at least at the skill positions a little bit. I think that where it's going to get really determined this game is in the trenches. You talked about Mr. Hagee, the center there. The offensive line for Florida looked very improved compared to 2019. I think, though, and this is just me, I think Florida's going to win. I'm not going to pick an upset here. But I think South Carolina is going to cover this line. I really do. I don't think Florida is going to score enough to cover 17.5. I think that's very high. 57.5 would not touch that either because I don't think South Carolina's offense is very good. So if I'm thinking that Florida's not going to score quite as much as I think, then I'm going to pick a low-scoring game. David Turner, am I crazy?
Yes, because they just dropped 51 points last week. So
against Ole Miss.
Oh, don't disrespect Lane that way. Come on.
What do you mean?
But no, I mean, again, Florida, from what I saw last week, I mean, the old ball coach would be proud with the way they were running up and down the field and they were scoring. Them Gators were chomping at the bits. They're going to eat some. They're going to eat some South Carolina Gamecocks this weekend. Now you heard it here, but they're going to be feasting on them. I like what you're saying about their defense in South Carolina. Again, their matchup on the corners. I just think the Florida run game comes into play this week. Those two backs wear down that South Carolina. They get the run game going. So even if their receivers start getting shut out a little bit, they can just run downhill and beat you with both those backs. They're just too loaded. I am going to take Florida, and I'm going to take the points. I think they beat South Carolina by like 20.
By 20. Oh, man. What's that over-under saying to you, though, David? Would you touch that over-under, 57.5?
Well, yeah, because Florida's going to score 51, and South Carolina just has to score 7, and there you go.
If all right, you're hearing it on the podcast right now, okay? Right on the podcast. If I don't know if I want to make a bet here, but if Florida scores 50 points on the Gamecocks this week, I will admit that David Turner is the most handsome man that I've ever seen in my entire life on the podcast next week. That's the bet that I'm going to make.
You don't even have to admit that. We already know it's true. You live in South Philly, Jersey area. There ain't no good-looking guys out there.
You're looking at him right now. It's the only man that matters in South Jersey. So I don't know. We'll see about that one. I'm calling it right now, though. J.C. Horn intercepts Kyle Trask this week. If nothing happens this week that will make me happy out of this game, J.C. Horn gets an interception against.
There you go. That's their 7 points. They get a pick six. J.C. Horns, they get 7 points out of that, and then 51 points by Florida. We're good to go. We're upfield. We win.
Zero chance. I don't usually make guarantees, but there is zero chance 50 gets dropped in South Carolina. Asking you, are you a new agent trying to learn how to evaluate and connect with players, market them to NFL teams, or develop their personal brands to attract marketing deals? Maverick Sports Consulting is ready to help. Build your clientele base and personal brand with our expert assistance through one of our agent consulting packages. Learn more at mavericksportsconsulting.com. We want to get into some NFL action for the week. The Oakland Raiders, I feel like we start with the Raiders every week, are taking on the Bills. I wonder why. I wonder why. Buffalo taking on the Buffalo Bills. 3-point favorite, Buffalo Bills. Over under is 52. That's another. That seems kind of high because
that one does seem high to me. That one is like, ooh.
All these this week seem a little high. I mean, I feel like the Raiders defense, even though they sucked last week, is improving a little bit. Buffalo has a good defense. I don't know. Okay. David, are you going to be a homer and pick the Raiders to cover here? What are your thoughts?
I think we saw a little chink in the armor last week with the Raiders. I think New England exposed them a little bit, showed a little way to beat them on the defense. Now, Buffalo, as you know, I like their defense. People are suspect on them. I think they're on the come. I think this is a defense on the come. It's gonna get gelled up here really quick. I think this is a week where you got to be – if you can't run the ball on Buffalo, you're going to have a hard time. I don't think you're throwing it all over the field. I just don't. I think they're going to dial up some nice zone blitzes and come at you. So I'm going to take Buffalo at home. And I know that's not a pick I usually would take because my boys are my boys, but I think Buffalo at home, the Raiders, I don't know if they stayed out there. They played New England at once out there, and then They got Buffalo, so I'm not sure if they stayed or not. That's hard to do back-to-back weeks on the East Coast, and if you traveled back and forth, it's definitely hard. So I think Buffalo being at home, they're going to edge out the Raiders, and they'll wind up winning by 6 maybe. I don't know if it's a full touchdown, but I think they'll win by 6.
Yeah, I'm on the exact same wavelength, honestly. I looked at this game and I was like, I take Buffalo. I'm not sure if I'm like so confident that I would actually put money on this game, but I mean, Buffalo's a good team. They're a good team. They play very good defense. They have a quarterback that's playing at MVP caliber level. Like, what am I missing here? The Raiders are kind of, and this is probably why it's the debate, right? It's because we saw the Raiders 2 weeks ago beat the New Orleans Saints, and at the time you were like, oh, that's a great win. That looks great for the Raiders. But then we saw the Saints play again this week, and we're just kind of like, wow, they do not look very good without Michael Thomas offensively. They do not look like the same team, even though Drew Brees ended up having a statistically good game this past weekend, 3 touchdowns. It just doesn't look the same right now. They look a little old. So I'm a little down on the Raiders. I was a little more high going into last week's podcast on the Raiders, so I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills in that one as well. Moving on.
The Bills have scored – look at this. The Bills have scored 27, 31, and I think 34. So
35.
35, okay. So they've scored, pretty much an average of 31 point or 32 points a game over the first 3 weeks. So that's again, that's really high scoring average for any offense to be doing. And the Raiders haven't stopped a lot of them. I mean, it's not like last week their offense only scored 20 points, and the New England Patriots scored 34 or something on them. So they're allowing teams to score on them. That's why I like the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills defense is going to play at just a little bit higher caliber, and therefore, and I'll say this: that safety number 24 for the Raiders, who they drafted, I think it was in the first round last year.
Yep.
He could not break down in space to save his life. He missed 4 open field tackles, coming downhill, bad angles, not being able to break down, reaching for tackles. I mean, he made one play, and I was like, okay, you caught my attention, kid. And then I focused on him the rest of the game. And, oh, my Lord, I was like, what are you guys looking at on film if this is the way he played in college? Because he missed at least 4 open field tackles that he should have made. It was, like, unbelievable. This kid was stiff in the hip, bending at the waist, reaching, not moving his feet. I could not believe. I was like, as an evaluator, I was sitting back going like, sucker, I'm going to take that jersey off you because Raider safeties are much better than that.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're watching either, David. And, talking about safeties filling against the run, where we could see some film on that?
Friday Night Scout School?
There we go. We got it. There it is. They should go to Friday Night Scout School right now. We covered safeties a few weeks ago. We can teach Abram how to break down in space. We can say what we're looking at there. Next game we want to talk about, Cleveland Browns off of a victory against the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys aren't very good, David, but they're still 4.5-point favorites, and the over-under is 55.5. 55.5. All right. Can we talk about this?
The Dallas Cowboys are tied for their division lead. So they're a division-leading Dallas Cowboys.
Good for them. That is the worst division I've ever seen in my life. That's so bad. What are we? 0-3, 0-2-1, 1-2, and 1-2. Is that what the division is right now?
Yeah, the Giants are only 1 game out of first place as they sit right now.
That's gross. That is so gross. I can't even tell you how gross that is. David, I was a little on the Dallas Cowboys bandwagon a little bit. I'm never going to be a fan of them, but I was buying into it a little bit. That roster replacing Garrett with Mike McCarthy, in theory, it sounded great. Dallas has had some injuries. Tyron Smith has been banged up. Travis Frederick had to retire in the offseason. There's been guys all over the place that have been dropping like flies. So, I don't want to say that it's definite failure yet, but this looks like the same Cowboys team, don't you think?
No, I can't buy that because week 1 they struggled. They lost by 3. Okay, they only scored 17 points. But then the next week, you look at what they did. They went out and they scored what is it here? Hold on. They scored 40 points and they beat Atlanta. They had a complete, second half run.
Who did they beat?
Oh, the birds that like to defeat themselves. Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes.
Atlanta Falcons that find ways to lose every game, which again we've talked about before. They just find ways to lose.
They did this past weekend too. It's
Exactly. It's amazing how they find ways to lose.
But then
Hold on, the Dallas Cowboy goes up to Seattle and still scores 31 points. So they've been in the game. Their offense and Mike McCarthy's strength, which is offense, is since week 1, week 2, and week 3, they're scoring a lot of points. They're starting to gel and come together. I think eventually this team's going. I mean, I think they got 7 guys on IR since training camp, and there are new coaches there. So I'm a Giant guy. You know that. I'm not a Dallas guy ever. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying you got to watch out for this team. They got some components and some parts that, again, they're going to be able to put together and make some wins. I don't like Jerry Jones' comment about Dak Prescott and why he's different than Patrick Mahomes about not making the play at the end of the game. I don't think that's fair. I don't really think that that's a good comparison for him to make right now when you're trying to negotiate in public contracts. To me, doing a business contract all the time, that's something I don't like about Dallas, and that can be a festering thing inside the locker room if those comments keep coming. And I do like what I see in Cleveland. I see some life out of them Cleveland dogs, the dog pound down there. So, I think it's going to be a better game. That's why I picked it for us to talk about than most people might be giving it credit. I think it's going to be a competitive, fun game to watch. I don't think we get to 55.5, in my opinion, but I do think those two teams, it's going to make it a fun game to watch this week.
Yeah, I would pick Dallas, and I'm with you, David. Like the pieces for Dallas, I bought into it, man. I was like, this team's probably going to win 11+ games, and they're going to win their division, and it could still happen. But
that run game for Cleveland is legit now. Both those running backs coming downhill. If the Cleveland Browns wind up winning this game, it's because Chubb went for like 124, 134, and got 2 touchdowns. And the other running back whose name's just eluding me right now, but the what?
Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt. He gets another, 80 or 90 yards and a touchdown. I mean, those 2 backs are very talented, and obviously they got the receivers. We all know about that and stuff. So, again, I think them running downhill, they might ball controlled to keep that Dallas offense off the field, because that Dallas offense is starting to become an offense you got to keep off the field in order to win the game.
Give me Dallas in the points. Give me the under on the 55.5. You mentioned Patrick Mahomes. You squeezed him in there, Dave. I can't believe we're going to go a whole podcast potentially without talking about how great that guy is. But the next game we have on Minnesota Vikings, Houston Texans. I'm sorry, man, but that game last night, and I have Mahomes in fantasy. I was just like, dude, this guy is unreal. Like, he's unreal.
Dude, that throw he made over not Patrick Peterson, Marcus Peters' shoulders to Tyreek Hill was, I mean, it wasn't even on a dime. That was like on a freaking dust, like a sand dust or something. Like, he hit that thing in the one spot that Tyreek could hit it, that Peters wasn't going to. I mean, that coverage was money coverage, and he put it in the one grain of sand that could hit, and it went perfect right there.
That was like, and the craziest part is like, he makes everything look so easy. Like, that did not look difficult at all. That was just like day in the park. There it is.
Well, he's like Sammy Davis Jr. or Gregory Hines tap dance, and it's just so natural and it's effortless and fluid. And then you watch it and you're in amazement. Your jaw opens and you're like, oh my God. And they just make it look like it's a Sunday stroll, And same thing with him. He's just out there playing ball at a very high level right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that with like Ken Griffey Jr. a few weeks ago, right? Like that swing, man. Like, they just make it look so easy. The great ones just make hard things look so simple, so simplistic. Like, it's poetry in motion, honestly. This game right here, if you would have told me in the preseason, though, and this is so honest, if you would have told me in the preseason that the Minnesota Vikings and the Houston Texans were going to be playing and they were both 0-3, I would have called you a liar, because I believe in Mike Zimmer. Houston, even though they're being run very poorly right now by O'Brien as their GM, ipso facto GM head coach combination, I would have thought Deshaun Watson's going to sneak you out a victory because that's kind of what he's been doing, even though he's had DeAndre Hopkins over the last couple of years. So we're dealing with a pick 'em. I didn't have a line on this game, at least on the site I was on. So no line, 54 over under. I don't know what to do with this, David. Honestly, I'm looking at this and I want to pick this game right now, but I'm going to defer to you to make the first statement on this game because I have no idea who's going to win this game. I have zero idea.
Well, again, I'm shocked at Minnesota's 0-3. I know they've had a couple bad games or a couple bad or some tough opponents a little bit, but man, 0-3, man, I did not see this coming at 0-3 for the Minnesota Vikings. I really was high on them. You can go back to like our first weekend pick'ems. I was really excited about seeing Minnesota play this year, and that's one team that Seattle should be calling to see if they can get Danielle Hunter from them because, at this point, if Seattle were to add Danielle Hunter and they don't have a guaranteed contract done with Danielle for next year, I mean, they go 0-4, and I would believe that there might be some guys for trade on that team to start building and getting draft capital for next year. I mean, they already took 16 draft picks or whatever this year, and then they drafted, I think, 13, and then they signed another 16 undrafted free agents. So they're already looking forward and building that way. Houston, I'm not surprised. You trade like your best player, Hopkins, away to get some dude off the street, and now you have no playmakers. You went and signed Randall Cobb and a couple other guys, but again, they're not the caliber of Hopkins. And the reason why Deshaun was able to move around and fling a ball up in the air and, someone come down with this because Hopkins was on the other end. You see what Hopkins is doing. I think he had another 8 receptions for the Cardinals this week. So, I mean, he's just added a lot of juice into their offense, and it was subtracted from Houston. I'm not surprised at all Houston's struggling. That one doesn't surprise me, but Minnesota struggling does. If I had to pick this game, I'm going to pick Minnesota because I still think they have more tools and they still have a better team environment. And I think Houston, the wheels are off, man. I think they're limping down the field already.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Like when I watch them, bro, I don't even see – I literally, Ryan, I do not see fighting that dog in Houston. I don't see fighting that dog. Like they're not out there hunting. They ain't out there hunting. Even J.J. Watt looks disheveled and not like the normal J.J. Watt.
No, it's a mess, honestly. And I don't even think Bill O'Brien's a bad coach, but him having general manager power right now, the moves that he's made, it's pathetic, honestly.
Well, and everybody wants to be like, oh, they got the roughest 3 games that you could have started the season with. Guess what? It's the NFL. You get to line up, you got to line up about who's – and they knew those games were coming. And you still made the moves you made. You still weren't prepared for them. And if you're telling me, oh, poor me, that means you're not ready to win a Super Bowl, and it's in week 3. You can't be poor me in week 3. You got to line up and get going.
Also, it's not college football, right? Like NFL, there's such high parity. Like the difference between a good team and an average team, like isn't that much of a decider. It's a couple plays here and there each game. We see so many upsets on a week-to-week, perceived upsets on a week-to-week basis. We see so many just weird storylines on a week-to-week basis. Guys having incredible games that we've never heard of. Like it happens so often because the parity is so high in the NFL. For me, though, like in this game, maybe it's just to go against you a little bit here. So, like, 2 bad teams right now. I'm going to pick the better quarterback. Like, I'm just going to defer to the better quarterback. I'm going to pick, even though I'm a fan of Mike Zimmer and his defensive philosophy, that team is reeling on both sides of the ball right now. Kirk Cousins looks bad. Minnesota's defense does not look like a Mike Zimmer defense. I'm going to go with Deshaun Watson just because if I have to pick between Watson and Cousins, I'm going to pick Deshaun Watson. There we go.
That's fair.
Last game of the night. Last game. Indianapolis, after a tough opening week loss to Jacksonville, has 2 straight wins. They look like they're back on the right track there. Against the undefeated, another surprise here, Chicago Bears, who just are changing quarterbacks. Mitchell Trubisky got the boot. Nick Foles is in. Nick Foles threw like 4 touchdowns in relief in the comeback victory. Good for him. Just what he does. Future Kyle Trask clone, Nick Foles. So we got 2.5 points. Indianapolis is favored. Over under 45. That seems about right to me. 45 seems about right on that game. David,
How many 3-0 teams have changed their quarterback?
in the middle of the game, right?
Yeah.
I guess your argument could have been that they were going to be 2-1 if they didn't change their quarterback, but yeah, it definitely doesn't happen often. Nick Foles is coming back to hopefully save the day again. We've seen it in his Philly career a couple times now. I'm getting a weird feeling on this game. I'm going to pick Indianapolis because I just don't believe in the Bears. I just really don't. I'm going to pick them to cover the 2.5. I'm going to pick them to win, even though I'm not like jumping in my chair like bet this game, because honestly, like the Minnesota-Houston game, I may actually put some money on that game. I might actually do it. I might put some money on Houston. This game, not touching, I don't think. But my gut says Indianapolis. And my gut also says bet the over on this game. Are you on the same wavelength with me, David?
Well, again, let's look at quality of opponent really quick. I know we just said it doesn't matter for, Houston. They should be winning anyways. But, Chicago, they beat the Giants, Detroit, and Atlanta. So it's not like they have beat New England, Seattle, and Pittsburgh. So, let's see I don't know. I think Indianapolis, they're my pick for the AFC this year. I really like what they're doing there. I think they have enough tools and weapons to really be a really solid team going forward. So I'm going to take Indianapolis. I think Chicago gets beat here, and I don't fear that pick at all.
All right. Well, there you have it for our picks of the week. Ending it out here now. Skipping the mailbag for tonight. We will be back next week, though, for the mailbag section. So please send us some questions over the week. We'll be more than happy to answer. Reliving this episode, Mr. Ian Williams came on. We recapped and gave you some previews for this week of action in college football and in the NFL. David, ending us out here, man. We had an awesome show, as always. Ian Williams was a ton of fun to be able to talk to. I felt like we had him on for like 40 minutes, so we might have went over a little bit on that one. But a lot of fun picking some games. What's just your general stance on tonight's podcast, and what was the favorite part maybe?
I just love getting on here every week with you and talking ball and, letting our listeners hear a different perspective of what we're thinking and why we're thinking it as we look at games and we look at matchups. I also love to get guests like Ian on where, people get to hear a player who, went through his rookie contract, was getting ready to make that jump to the elite level, be a starter like you heard him. The game was finally starting to slow down for him and everything. And then he got hurt, which then led to an infection, which ended his career. If you didn't hear the business in that, guys, if you're lucky enough, if you're fortunate enough to be one of these players that make it to the NFL, every year there's only about 150 roster changes from all the teams, new players getting on rosters. If you're lucky enough to be one of those 157 players that get on a team, do like what Ian did. He listened to the veterans in the locker room, both offense and defense. He got to practice against them. He took advantage of the opportunity to build himself a career, and you never know when it's over. Save your money. Don't go out blowing your money. Do what you have to do to take advantage of what that can do to set you up for life. It's not something to be foolish with. Understand the average career in the NFL is 3.3 years, and you don't know if an injury, an infection, or a pandemic stops you from playing. So literally, that's what I took from tonight is how special Ian Williams is because he took advantage of the opportunity. He didn't go in there and sulk as an undrafted free agent. He earned his way up to be a starter. And then when that opportunity was taken away from him due to an infection and an injury, he's now turned it into his post-career playing career where he was able to be a analyst, talk sports on radio, on TV, and he's also championing this new silver product that helps eliminate MRSA, SARS, COVID-19 in the laundry. And I guess it's a spray too. I'm not sure, something like that. So it helps take care of people, something that, obviously is close to his heart.
And a couple things we have coming up soon this Friday. As every Friday, we are doing Friday Night Scout School, talking some passing concepts, 9 o'clock Eastern time. Make sure if you're not signed up to that, go to www.nfldraftbible.com, buy our season pass, at least buy the pass for that. give us a shot, see what you like, see what you think. Send us a note. Let us know how you enjoyed that seminar. So again, Friday Night Scout School. Also Thursday, if you're listening to this on a Wednesday or whenever you're listening to it, if it is before October 1st, you can sign up. You can send me an email at ryan@nfldraftbible.com to RSVP for a Division II player spotlight. I have 7 of the absolute best players on the Division II level coming on to a seminar, a Zoom call at 8:30 Eastern time this Thursday to talk ball, talk about their careers, some of their accomplishments, and just outlook into their future. Obviously, their senior seasons have been, flipped on their head a little bit, but they're excellent football players. I'm looking forward to gaining some incredible insight into their journeys. Next week, we'll be back here 8:30 Eastern time on Tuesday for the live. If you are not watching it, you should go to my Twitter at Rise and Draft to check out the live. Send us some questions that way. This will be released, if you are awaiting the release, at 3 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday, 12 o'clock Pacific time. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Make sure you like, share, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Rise and Draft for me, and at Mav_sports for Mr. David Turner here. Signing off for Mavs Sports Take, episode 8. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.